Mr. Callister, 5 years you've been an MHK now. Are you a different MHK, a different politician now than you were 5 years ago?
Yes, most definitely. I've learned so much, John, over the last 5 years. I'd like to think I'm more measured. I will actually criticise government when I feel it's needed, but I'll support government when it's needed also, especially over the last 2 years when we've had to fight with COVID-19, which has had such a detrimental effect, not just on government, but from businesses and our community. So I'd like to think I'm more measured now than I was in, say, 2016.
Would you say you were deferential towards government when you first entered?
I think when I entered politics, going back to 2011-12, I probably didn't know the processes. I read and followed politics quite closely. But over this 5 years, I've actually learned that I can get things done a lot quicker sometimes, maybe than asking a question on the floor of keys. I've got to know offices, I've got to know departments. I've worked in 5 government departments in this administration, probably the most that any MHK has done. So I've actually got to learn the systems. I've been able to integrate into those and actually influence policies that affect us all.
Shouldn't politicians coming into such an important role as an MHK know all the procedures before they actually hit the ground?
It is. I think you're absolutely right. I think you know so much, but there's a lot you will still learn. I think if you speak to any MHK who came in 2016, they will say they've learned an incredible amount of information and how processes worked, working with officers. I mean, as I say, I've worked in 5 government departments, so I have got a range of skills, and I've learned a considerable amount of information of how government works as a body.
I'll ask you in a moment about what you think you've achieved in those departments. First of all, what's your relationship with Onchan commissioners?
Onchan commissioners is fine. I think they, as I say, there is a separation between local and national politics, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't quite understand.
Do you attend their meetings? Do you talk to them?
No, I don't talk to. I talk to the commissioners, I talk to the clerks and everything else, not a problem. But I don't attend the meetings because I'm a national politician. But that doesn't mean that I don't read their minutes. It doesn't mean that I don't speak to the commissioners when I need to on local issues, especially around community policing, especially when I feel the commissioners have made a decision which I'm not particularly comfortable with.
Just talk about community policing. Obviously, there is concern at the moment that Onchan is turning it into a fairly difficult area.
No, that's not true. I mean, if you look at it, the whole island has got a few issues with antisocial behaviour, and that's across the island. Onchan is no different than, say, in Ramsey and in Castletown. Now, what's happening is just isolated incidents over the summer. Now, we've got to work with the community, work with the local authorities to make sure that people feel safe in their homes, because the Isle of Man as a whole is an incredibly safe place to live.
But a community like Onchan, an isolated incident can lead to a lot of people saying, oh, I'm a bit worried about living here now. It can spread like wildfire.
I don't think anyone says they're worried about living here. I think some people have concerns when you see a large group of 15 to 20 youths walking around our village. And it is up to the police to work with local commissioners and with the local authority and local MHKs to find a solution to make sure there's activities going on in and around our area. Now, a lot of the time, those individuals are not actually from Onchan, so let's put that very clear.
So it's not just giving the local children something to do, it's making sure they're not influenced by people coming in from outside.
Well, it's just a range of things. But this, as I say, that's a local issue. This is a national election, and we should carry on from that point.
Yeah, but Onchan people were looking to their MHKs, obviously, for problem areas, and they will regard this as a problem area.
What's happening, John, is people contact me to say they are concerned. Those concerns have been raised with the Isle of Man Policing Unit. There's been meetings arranged, and we've discussed them. And we've come up with a range of solutions. Now, that, again, is very much a community issue. It's not a national issue.
You describe yourself, quote, as a truly independent candidate. Is that possible in the Isle of Man? I mean, you've got to build alliances, etc. You've got to get things achieved. Can you be truly independent? You have to be part of alliances in places, don't you?
Yes, and I think I absolutely am 100% independent. Doesn't mean that I don't work with the Liberal Van Party or with Labour. I've done which I have done over the last 5 years. I've worked on many projects that they've led and supported, and the same I've done with government. But I am independent. I listened to what's put in front of me, and I make decisions based on the evidence that's presented to me, however difficult those decisions may be. But on the other side, I actually explain explain them to my constituents, and I have done for 5 years.
You have surgeries, presumably. You talk to you.
I've held over 50 surgeries in my constituency every third Saturday of the month.
What's the turnout like?
It's not too bad. Sometimes I can get, a handful of people. Sometimes I can get 30 or 40 people. It depends on what is affecting constituents. But I have done it, and I'm glad I've done it.
Is there a major issue that comes up time and time again?
No, I think it's each person is individually different. A lot of it's potholes. A lot of it can be waiting times. It can be a range of topics. And what normally happens is, what I can assure constituents is, a correspondence is normally drafted within a few hours on my surgery and sent to the department to try and help them.
You spent 17 years in the finance sector, so you have a broad experience in that area. What is your view of the Isle of Man's finances?
I think we're doing okay. I mean,
we just spent 250 million, up to 250
we have,
million.
And we have to look at that, and we'll have to try and to repair some of our unemployment figures, because we're around about 750 unemployed at the moment, but we've had historic low unemployment. So we do have to create opportunity. We do have to create this diverse economy, so we're not relying on one particular sector. We also have to make sure, as I've said before, lifelong learning opportunities. There are people, the highest categories of unemployment on our island seem to be under 24s and over 50s. So we need to create opportunities. Now, the government, as a rule, has already set the future with regard to the pensionable age. We've increased those ages from 66 to 67 to 68 over the next 25 years. So if people are going to be leaving one particular career at, say, at the age of 50, then they should be given training to take on another opportunity.
Well, compulsory. They should be forced to carry on rather than just
retire. We have got equality legislation, but there is some times where people are just not able to do the job that they were doing. Say, for example, a manual job.
Yeah, a physical job.
So people have to be given an opportunity to re-educate, to retrain, to try a second career, because not everyone wants to retire at 50 or 55 or even at 65.
You say in your web that you want to ensure, or a government should ensure delivery of a first-class health service, ensure delivery of a first-class education system. This is more of a wish list, really, than a realistic agenda, because we've been trying for this for a long time, haven't we? And look what's happening. The health system is up in the air at the moment and having to be restructured.
We've got a new health service, and as you say, we've set up the Manx Care system, and we have got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually look at how services delivered within our health service. Now, this, I know from when I've raised questions over the last 5 years, that there has been concerns about waiting lists. There has been concerns about how people are treated, how the complaint system is working. Now, Manx Care is in there to get in on an operational level. The politicians and the departments will come in at a strategy level, and it's absolutely right that we start looking at the operational. We look at the true cost for delivering that service.
Are you confident in Manx Care?
I am at the moment, but we've only just started. The journey only started in April. Let's ask that question in a couple of years' time. But they have to deliver increased standards of care, but at the same time also drive down those waiting lists. But to be fair to the public, more of those services need to be delivered in our community as well.
Well, let's just stay with care. And the big question at the moment, the borders. We're looking, I think, to going to 2.5, which understandably is a bit complicated to people to understand exactly where we are. What are your view on borders?
I've since January, I've been very clear. I think we needed to get to a stage where we could open up our borders again, get back to normal.
Completely open them up.
Yeah, and I think 28th of June is right. I've been very close working with our tourist sector over the last 5 years. It's a delegation that I've really enjoyed, along with motorsport. Our tourism sector is on our knees. It needs to rebuild. It needs to get over this particular year.
How do we do
and
that?
To bounce back. Well, we need to open up our borders. We need the government to actually have a border system in place. We've got to restart. You've got to go back to 2018. We were having over 308,000 visitors. All of that is gone. We've got to rebuild. But when we rebuild, we've got a perfect opportunity to come back bigger and better. We've got a brand new ferry terminal coming on board. We've got the promenade coming online. We've bought the the steam package company, which has been so invaluable during COVID-19. We now got to rebuild those links with our airlines.
I'm glad you raised the subject of the sea terminal, because we seem now to have gone above 40 millions, if you add up all the small cash, etc., it could be that we get up closer to 50 millions. Are we getting a sea terminal at any cost?
Well, unfortunately, I think most of the contracts were signed, just pre-COVID-19.
But it seems to be any rise in cost goes to the client, which inadvertently comes back to the government.
Yeah, but
we're doomed to pay whatever is required.
But when we look at the ferry terminal, it will be invaluable to our tourist sector.
But at any cost?
No, and I don't believe it should be in any cost. Now, I am a member of the Department of Infrastructure. I came in July 2020. A lot of the contracts are already signed, but as a political member, I've had oversight of the ports. I have political responsibility for ports, and I'm having a very keen interest in that project.
So if you had come in beforehand and seen what contract had been signed, you would have raised your hand and said, hang about?
No, I don't. I think there is an unknown factor, and there's a cost associated to that, and that is the fact that COVID-19 has had a financial impact on many of our schemes. And that's across the world, not just in the Isle of Man, but across the world in the UK. So there is a financial effect to that. How much that is still to be determined. And yes, the cost has increased because of COVID-19. And there's other elements, the unknown factors. Now, as a political member, I've gone through those finances and I'm watching it very, very closely. And as I say, unfortunately, it will increase, but we don't know what the final figure will be.
Let's go to motorsport. It's an area which you're in charge of. When can we get the TT back again? And is there a chance we won't get the TT back again?
We will definitely get the TT back again. The team within DFE have worked incredibly well over the last 18 months to bring this back bigger and better. Now, we have 2019, we were welcoming 46,000 visitors to the island. Now, we've got to remember that this generated around £37 million for our exchequer benefit for the island, along with an exchequer benefit of around £4.8 million. Now, what we actually need to do is to make sure we come back bigger and better. And I say we've added the bits that are going to be, the promenade, as we said, the ferry terminal was there. Now, what we need to do is bring that event bigger and better. Now, we're going to make a series of announcements. I think next month is going to be the first one. Some of the changes we just cannot implement till 2023. But by 2023, we'll have a fantastic product.
We're going to have a timing board up opposite the grandstand, aren't we? There seems to be no cash for that at the moment.
We are working to get the scoreboard back for 2022. If it's not possible, now, there is a factor in that which is beyond our control, and that is planning. We just don't know how long it'll take to go through planning.
Is it going through planning at the moment?
There's an application just about to be submitted. So once that is submitted, we will put the pictures in the public domain, which actually brings back to what I promised in January.
How can they not say it? Because that's what was there before, and it's just replacing like with like, isn't it?
Do you actually understand planning? We've just got to be precautious. We will submit our
just putting the simplistic point of view that a person in the street might put, or the
motorcycle
enthusiast.
It's not exactly like for like. There is some tweaks, and I say there is some updated technologies in there, which is what we've told people since January.
So it's going to be all singing, all dancing when it goes up?
No, it'll be a scoreboard with some technology in it, John.
Will it look like the old one?
It will look like the old one. That was one thing that I made sure that had to happen.
So it'll keep on with the retro feel about the TT in some regards?
Wait until next month, you'll see the photographs.
Oh, we'll look forward to that. Just returning to Onchan and housing.
Yes.
The housing position in Onchan, obviously how Onchan looks after its own housing, etc. Is that the situation that should continue? Because some people say the whole island should actually come together in a holistic way on this.
I think I've been more outspoken on housing than any other topic over the last 5 years, because I still feel housing strategy policy on the island is not correct. I still think when you look at it, yes, Onchan commissioners should run their own housing, but I don't believe the systems are right. And I know Jersey Trust used the word trust, which is relating to transforming, respect, understanding and strength and teamwork. And I really think they should. They should be running the housing, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at the whole system. I don't think the way the applications are vetted is correct. I don't believe the 5-year tenancy is right when people are reviewed. It doesn't take into other factors. I want the whole of the housing strategy reviewed. I also, and it's not just social housing, I want the first-time buyer schemes. Far too many people on this island are actually are sitting just outside the eligibility of qualifications, which leaves only rental options available.
Should people expect to own their own homes?
Yes. I think if people want to buy their own homes, then we should try and support
But the only
them.
way that can happen is if there's a level set to house prices, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we know that house prices in 2019, the average house price on the island was around 288,000. That price has increased to 310 in 2020. What we need is a housing policy that goes right across our sector, because I still personally think there's a lot of people in social housing that could be moved into first-time buyers with support. Now, that may include an equity support. Now, I don't believe the government giving money to somebody to get on the property ladder, but there's nothing wrong with the government giving an equity stake, which is then replaced in 5 years' time or something, which gives people time to adjust, to get in there, to get used to buying their own property. At the same time, that will then free up social housing for the ones most in need.
It's going to be difficult for the island in the next few years as they recover from COVID.
Absolutely. We've got to replace the £225 million that we've actually lost. But there again, the next government has got to be very sympathetic.
I suppose you should use the word lost, but you could say invested to keep our island going.
You're absolutely right, and I apologise. I mean, invest is right. We've protected. That's a better word. We've protected businesses. We've protected people's jobs. Now, the next administration can't just bring in a load of charges. We've got to be sympathetic that a lot of people will be in financial distress because of COVID-19. So any charges that are implemented over the next 5 years has to bear that in mind.
Would you like to be a minister in that next administration?
That will come down to the next chief minister, whoever he or she may be.
But do you see yourself, would you like to be a minister,
Yes.
or would you prefer doing
the
job you've been doing
No,
the last 5
I'd say
years?
I've worked in 5 government departments. I personally feel I've influenced more policy from within departments than I ever could sitting on the back
So you're
bench
quite
of the
happy
House Keys.
sitting behind the scenes, pulling a few strings?
Yes, I mean, if you want an example, landlord registration bill, that piece of legislation was a bag of spanners that went out for consultation. Should never have gone out. But what I did was I fought very hard, and anyone who knew me through that period, I went through. I won't describe hell, but I went through a very torturous time to get that bill changed. I was able to convince the minister and the department to remove custodial sentences, to look again at the level of fines, look again at the application. That's just one example of me working behind the scenes to make sure that something is fit for purpose.
You use the phrase, quite a good phrase, bag of spanners. There have been a few bag of spanners in this administration, have there? Bills that have had to be withdrawn.
Yeah, and I think that
It's embarrassing for the government. It's embarrassing, I suppose, for the Parliament.
You could look at it being embarrassed, but sometimes, they are bag of spanners, and it takes a very sharp eye from a backbench MHK, or in a lot of the cases, and other cases, a legislative council member, to actually highlight that the bill that's coming before the chambers is not fit for purpose. And I think what we should highlight, there's a lot more MHKs in this administration actually looked at the detail than just looked for the pomp and ceremony.
What's your relationship with your fellow constituency MHK, Julie Edge?
Fine. I mean, I say we still share
There
an
does seem
office.
to be friction between you from time to time.
I think, there is, because we are a same.
So there is friction. There is an edge, if I can pun.
But there is with a lot of House Keys members. People are on different political spectrums.
So it's not important that two members in a same constituency go around hand in hand, if I can put it that way.
No, we've worked incredibly close. At the end of the day, I think at the heart of this, we have to remember that Julie was elected under the Liberal Vannin ticket. I stood as an independent. So we came into politics from 2 different streets. And then suddenly Julie left the party and then became independent. So I'd already set my path that I was going to work with people. Now, we worked incredibly well on the community policing, as we've already highlighted. We worked incredibly well on the Eastern Area Plan. I was able to make sure that her concerns, her voices was heard at that public inquiry as well.
So you're saying in important areas you are working together?
We're working very well together on the important things, but we are from 2 different political spectrums. But that doesn't mean we don't work properly for the community.
Can I just throw one last thing at you as we come to the end? The Isle of Man government must re-establish a level of trust and confidence in the island. How and in what ways has it lost that? And was it never there?
I think the one thing I've seen more in anything else in this administration is the government, all government departments and MHKs don't really explain those difficult decisions, how they came to it. Now, I've written over 400,000 words in this administration explaining every week what time of day I start, what time I finish, but also explaining some of those difficult decisions.
It's
how we've reached them.
those lists are very objective. There's nothing about you in there, isn't it? You're just giving a list, basically, of what's happening.
Well, I pick a topic and I'll pick it, so I will explain it. Now, a lot of the time...
But you won't give your view on it.
I do give my view on it quite often. Yes, I do. I actually do highlight when I think there's a failing. I'll highlight when there's something going wrong. Now, the key thing is, a lot of the time, what people see is what they hear on the radio, what they actually read in the paper. But that's not technically always the full story. And it's up to us as government departments, it's up to us as MHKs to explain these difficult decisions.
And to simplify things, because some things are very complicated.
No, I'm not talking about simplifying. It's about explaining these difficult decisions, how I've made that decision on behalf of my constituents.
By simplifying, and so people can understand and appreciate.
Yeah, so if somebody contacts me and say, I don't understand how you've made this decision, Rob. Take the landlord's bill, for example. Something I'm very passionate about. I can explain it to people. I'll ring them and say, I've made this decision. I support the landlord's bill because we do need to increase standards, the minimum standards for accommodation on our island. But the bill has to be fair. So it's up to me to explain them.
Rob Callister, standing once again for Onchan in the general election, which is happening in September.